Hello, radio listeners. You are listening to the Medical Freedom Radio Show with Heatherlyn Martin. Today, I am talking with pain patient advocate Cynthia Thompson. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Heather. I sure do appreciate it.
Cynthia, if you could, tell us a little bit about your background, what brings you onto our show today.
Well, I had a background before I got injured. I had a horrific injury back in 2001. But before that, my mother and I started the first employment company and drug testing program in Georgia, in North Georgia, with 3 counties. And that's my professional background. I started the Drugs Don't Work program for companies. We did employee drug testing. We did jails, cities, police departments, fire departments, that kind of thing. So that's where my professional background is. We started that from the ground up. And then in 2001, I went to an oral surgeon because I needed a wisdom tooth removed. And unfortunately, for some reason, he used a bone saw and I suffered a horrific injury and was in a coma for 3 weeks. And ever since then, it's just been multiple medical situations over the last 20 years that have originated from that original injury. And when I'm out there, I see, trying to find doctors now and everything from 2001 to I'll say around 2015, 2016, I only had one pain doctor my entire life. Mm-hmm. And then he decided, evidently, he made the decision or was forced to make the decision, because I do think he was a high prescriber at that time, and that's who they were going after. But he made the decision to become an addiction specialist and abandon all of his pain patients. Well, I was in a mess. We didn't know what to do. So we began searching, and we found lots of help through the academic health system. Emory University in Atlanta, I must give them a shout out. They've saved my life several times. And now it's very hard to find proper medical treatment for painful disease patients.
Right.
And I am up close and personal with the healthcare system because I also have spontaneous fractures due to the steroid use that the doctors did for the nerve injuries. So now I have the problem with breaking bones spontaneously, like you walk across the floor and your ankle shatters in 3 pieces, those kinds of things. And I need
You said
proper
that was from
care.
The steroid injections?
Yes, the only way they were able to do anything with the nerves that were damaged from the oral surgeon was nobody had ever seen anything like this. So Emory sent me to Virginia to one of the world-renowned dental nerve damage doctors. He was able to correct the lingual nerve. It was completely cut. I could not speak. He went in and microsurgered. He did microsurgery on those nerves, on the lingual nerve, and of course I'm able to speak now. Great. But they could not fix any of the damage. It just had to be time and prayer and good treatment. And I got good treatment all the way up to 2015, 2016. And now I can't find good care anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And that's the story we hear over and over again on the show. The adequate pain care has become a unicorn.
Let me give you one example.
It's been a rug ripped out from underneath millions of chronic pain sufferers.
I was driving. I had a life. I was an advocate. I was doing great. And then when I was completely abandoned, I've been homebound, bedbound, and I don't drive. Yeah. And I think that's very sad. Not in the richest country in the world. Come on, everybody. Mm-hmm. We deserve proper medical care. I don't care what your lot in life is.
Exactly. And the mainstream media is not covering this issue. They're giving such a skewed picture of what is happening simply to push the prohibition agenda.
Well, and let alone it being an election year. Our voices aren't being heard. And I don't want to have to wait on just the regular folks taking their son off the baseball field with a broken pinky and then realizing that he's going to scream through the whole thing because he's not going to be given proper pain treatment. I don't want it to get to that point. Somebody has got to listen to us.
The point
there are 50 million of us. Yes, 50 million of us. So
Hmm.
I am just
And you
so
bring up a
pleased.
really good point, Cynthia. You bring up a really good point, because, and I try to bring this up on the show as much as possible too, to our listeners out there, that if this is something that you might think of just people with chronic injuries or illness, but no, it
Oh
could
no.
impact any of us. I mean, we're all just one trip and fall. We're all just one car accident away from being in a situation where we could have tremendous injuries and be hospitalized and not have any pain medicine.
It's almost a war crime, in my opinion. I just can't believe it.
Yeah, I
Knowing
think
that
it
I
is.
know exactly what works, I know what will help me be someone who can participate in my American
Hmm.
society. But
It is a
yet,
war. It's a declared war.
it's
It's
an
the
absolute
declared war
war.
on drugs, and the American people are the collateral damage.
And the thing I don't think people out in the mainstream do not realize is the corruption that went into the guidelines that caused these issues for
Wow.
50 million Americans, including the disabled.
Hmm. Yeah. And also, I see a direct link between the national change in the attitudes towards cannabis, that most states are now
Oh, they're
legal.
going to make more money off that than making money
Yeah.
off the big pharma.
But the
Of
thing
course, they
is,
grow marijuana
but
crazy.
the thing
Of
is
course, they
that
do.
our police systems have become dependent on that war of drugs for the revenues, because when you have a
The
war
war
on
on
drugs,
drugs has not worked.
but it has worked for the pockets of certain interests, because when you're seizing cars and properties and houses and just big ticket items just because you have a drug charge
Without even
on
an indictment, grant you, with no indictment, they can now
it,
seize
and they take all
doctors'
your
offices.
property.
That's
It-
right. They can
you know
take it
and
all.
and
You won't get it back.
right now we have this movement to defund the police. And I've been saying, this is going to greatly impact their budgets if we end the war on drugs. So I
Absolutely.
don't know
That's what they
how we
spend
can
most of
have a
their time on.
conversation on defunding the police without talking about how police are how they are funded, and that being through these property seizures, through the spoils of the declared war on drugs.
And small marijuana possession and things of that nature. It's just ridiculous.
Hmm. Well, now they're seizing the properties of doctors' offices,
And their
sometimes
records.
doctors' homes and vehicles and property. Now, doctors, for the most part, come from a certain class of people, a certain
Absolutely.
class of privilege. I mean,
No
just
doubt.
to have the background and the systems in place that are going to allow somebody to go to medical school and graduate and have a practice generally indicate some origin in a position of privilege.
Absolutely.
We were
I
talking a little
totally agree.
bit before the show about why aren't doctors just banding together about this injustice? Why aren't they uniting together to protect their right to practice medicine?
And to
And
protect their right from illegal search and seizure of their property, their
yeah,
whole business, their livelihood.
and I
Why
think
would not,
though
why
there
would they
is a
not be fair?
reason, I think there is a reason for that, and being that so many of them have come from that position of privilege. They know if they take a stand, they're going to be on the line. They see
Yeah,
their
they don't want to rock
colleagues,
the boat.
yeah, they see all their colleagues who do take a stand losing their license, going to federal prison. It is outright
It's
persecution.
insane.
And it's really hard to leave that position of comfort and job security and high income, and maybe
And prestige.
you probably have a mountain of student loans keeping you
Right.
pinned
There's a
from.
lot of factors that shouldn't be a factor.
Exactly. And that, goes back to the fact that we did not create a provision for medical freedom in this country when we set up an experimental free country. The focus at the time was on religion. So it was a different time. People had different attitudes, different priorities. Slavery
We've
was
learned a
still a
lot.
thing. So they
We're
didn't want to talk
we
about
are
self-ownership.
right. I mean, we've learned a lot.
Hmm.
And I'm just ready for the doctors to stand up and fight. I
Yeah.
don't understand, doctors. I do understand, but
Right.
you got to make a change, because either way, you're
Mhm.
going to be left out in the cold, because pain patients are going to come to you to get Suboxone. Okay? They're just not. They know the deal now. If a pain patient today in America accepts a Suboxone or prescription from a doctor, Medicare, if you are on Medicare and you are disabled, they will tag you with the prescription drug monitoring program in your state as a Suboxone user,
Mhm.
and you're tagged. And
Yes.
Medicare is doing that. They are doing that.
So much for protection of privacy.
Right. Where's my HIPAA rights?
Yes.
And that's exactly what I told. When I got abandoned by the doctor, I was giving a prescription monitoring program release. And it showed on there that I had gone to like 3 different states to doctors I've never known in my life, getting controlled substances for my medical condition.
It was all fabricated.
It was wrong. I called them. They couldn't believe, first of all, we don't talk to patients. I said, well, you better find a supervisor, because you violated my HIPAA rights and you have gotten me abandoned by my doctor, which is going to make me homebound, and I'm scared. And do you know that they would not speak to me? They said, well, you'll need to call all those doctors and all those drugstores. I said, I don't know these people. I've never been to Minnesota to this doctor. It was so erroneous. So I can't say this loud enough. If you're a patient, or if you're a caregiver of a patient, and they are taking controlled substances for their medical conditions, you need to request that prescription monitoring program report from either your doctor or your governor, because they are making so many mistakes, and the patient has no recourse. None.
Yeah. We see this so many times in our current medical system, where the systems are in place to completely disempower the patient. And I know a lot of people who are in medical advocacy like to jump in there and say to me, oh, no, you can never take that attitude. Well, the fact is, when the doctor says, no, I will not write you this prescription, there is no recourse for you to get that prescription, or that test, or the referral to a specialist, or anything.
No, and even if you quote CDC guidelines, which are so ridiculous, but if you quote, okay, you can't abandon me with an injury, you also have to give me 30 more days of continued care once you tell me that you don't want to be my doctor anymore, and you must give me legitimate referrals. That's the stupidest thing in the world. The doctor's getting rid of you. You think he's going to give you legitimate referrals? No.
No, the referral system is very badly broken.
That's another story. Oh, it sure is. Because you can get referrals sent, and then you call and say, well, why can't I make my appointment? The referral was sent from my primary care doctor, and they're like, well, we're not accepting you as a patient for no reason other than possibly that prescription monitoring report. That is erroneous, that I have no recourse in fixing. That's discrimination.
It is. Definitely.
That is a violation of my privacy rights. They are using my private information, as erroneous as it is, and they are affecting my quality of life.
Absolutely. I've seen this firsthand. I am very close to somebody who is a chronic pain patient, whom I have seen go from adequate pain treatment to inadequate pain treatment and complete loss of life, or loss of quality of life. I mean, there's Freudian slip there. Yeah, it's like a loss of life. I mean, when you cannot have the things in life that create joy for you, it's a really dismal proposition for anyone. And
this may sound kind of out there. Yes, and to be honest, the prisoners at Guantanamo Bay are treated better than me, and I got hurt by a doctor. I didn't ask for any of this. My life was going great. But by God, you're not going to discriminate against me because of a medical condition.
I'm not familiar with the situation in Guantanamo. Could you elaborate a
Oh,
little
I'm
bit?
not either. Excuse me. I shouldn't have even mentioned that. But what I'm trying to say, the
Okay,
point
just a
I'm trying to
metaphor.
make, that's a little out there and a little political, but the point I'm trying to make is that a regular patient with a painful disease diagnosis is
Mm-hmm.
not getting treated. But, you know, our prisons, they treat people. They're not doing well with the mental health. What does it do to someone's mental health when you take their quality of life away? What good does that do to anyone?
I'm actually not sure of that. Unfortunately, the prison population doesn't really have too much access to
This is true.
communicate outside of where they are. I actually wonder about that, if they're getting even adequate pain medicine in the prisons, because I've heard about this being actually a global issue in places
It is a
like,
global issue, but it was started by America.
what's that?
I believe it was started in America when those guidelines came out. You can just, I mean, I wish there was a
Yeah.
way that I could track the way it just got globalized. They're taking up the same talking
Mm-hmm.
points of, you know, anybody that's taking a narcotic is an addict. That
Right.
is, the science absolutely denies that.
Yeah, and we're seeing more of that global coordination now in this COVID thing.
I have called Canada. I have called Mexico. I have called several different countries just to get a feel. You know, you guys having problems down there? I mean, what's access like? That kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
one by one, they're all following suit to the 2016 CDC guidelines that
Right.
are hurting all 50 million of us.
Absolutely. And going back to what you said before, even if I like that you said that even if you review the actual wording of the guidelines with the doctors,
They don't care.
how they are acting upon it is even more extreme than how the guidelines are written. My partner did
Yes, it
that.
wasn't meant for anybody other than primary care physicians, not
Yeah.
paying doctors.
In 2013, my partner and I tried to move out to Seattle, Washington. And the biggest challenge we found out there was trying to get a doctor that would take him. And he went on the CDC website and got the actual guidelines, the wording, sat down with the doctors, went over it, and they're, yeah, we know what
It
it
didn't
says on the
matter.
paper. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to protect ourselves from
That's
losing
right.
our
You're not as
practice.
important as my bottom line.
And you have like these DEA agents basically just
Oh, they're
running
like
rogue and
troopers, for
taking,
God's sakes.
it's
They're
like,
awful.
it's a war. You got SWAT teams coming and seizing a doctor's office.
It's incredible. And putting locks on the doors to all these people that are in such great need. It is just sinful. I just cannot believe it. And I've experienced every aspect. You can imagine over a 20-year period of time, everything I've been through, up close and personal. I have seen it turn on a dime just because of a guideline. What
Yeah.
were they thinking? What were these doctors thinking? Why didn't they question the science?
Exactly. And a lot of the science is very bad science. It's based on old animal studies.
It's based on addiction disease, you
Well,
know?
even when you think about addiction, the original experiments that supposedly proved the addictive power of opiates and their deadliness were these experiments with caged rats. Now, rats are like us, they're omnivores, they're
Right.
social, they get depressed when they're in bad situations. So they would take a rat in a sterile cage that was very small and just give it in a dispenser so that it could just keep dosing itself, and they would find that these rats just would dose themselves to death. And they're like, wow, look how bad this is. If someone just has access to this, they're inevitably going to kill
That's so
themselves.
wrong. That's
And
not
this
good science.
other researcher, I can't think of his name right, a Canadian researcher, he did an experiment called Rat Park. Actually, I have a video on my channel where I talk about it, and there's other videos on YouTube where you can learn about it.
Mm-hmm.
This researcher basically did the same experiment. He had the opiates available for the rats, but he also put them into a social environment where they had interactions and things to do, and none of the rats died in this enclosure with these opiates
being
being
dosed, but being in a
continuously
social.
available. Yeah, and
Mhm.
it's the addiction is very psychological. It's something that needs to be, treated in very individualized fashion. All medicine needs to be
And a lot of it
individualized.
is hereditary. A
Hmm.
lot of it is hereditary. You don't get, there's not many people that are going to have the disease of addiction that weren't
Right.
already predisposed. It's just
Yes.
like alcoholism. It really is. And if
Mhm.
you get down to those basic scientific facts that anybody can understand, and we can get the mainstream media to start listening some way,
Yeah.
somehow, that's
You
the
are
only way
lis-
it's going to change.
you are listening to
Hmm?
the Medical Freedom Radio Show with your host, Heatherlyn Martin. Today I am talking with Cynthia Thompson, pain patient advocate. If you're catching us on the radio, you're listening to WGXC 90.7 FM, Acra, your community radio station. So, Cynthia, I want to get back to what we were just talking about.
Okay.
So sorry to interrupt you there. I just had to do my station ID.
No problem. I forgot, but now I remember.
You remember now?
I do remember now.
Okay. So we were talking about accessibility for pain patients to getting their pain medicine, specifically the effective kind, the kind that is derived naturally from plant medicine, the opium poppy, which human beings have been using for thousands and thousands of years. This is one of the things that always gets me. So many people want to move towards more natural plant-based medicine, and it's exactly our most natural and plant-based medicines.
It's the same thing. Yes.
Yeah, they're
Yes.
being demonized and taken away from us. And now I remember the point I wanted to go back and talk to you about. We were talking about the rates of addiction.
Yes.
The thing is, for a person to actually become addicted to an opioid from a prescription from a doctor is less than 2%. There was an
Yeah, it's like
article
zero
about
zero
that in the
four.
Washington
And
Post. There's just
absolutely.
a lot of set information that shows that. The rate of opiate use and abuse has been virtually unchanged in this country since the end of the Civil War.
For
When
decades. Yes,
for
for
centuries,
zillions.
yeah.
Exactly.
And
Centuries.
and
Come on,
considering
people.
considering
Yes.
at that time, at the end of the Civil War, you had access to cannabinoids, you had access to opioids, you could buy
There
them
was
at
no
your
prohibition.
there was no prohibition, you could buy them at your local drugstore, you could
Oh, yes.
medicate your children when they're in pain and they can't sleep. It was available to people, and we were allowed to use this medicine. So nothing has changed except for
The
law
messaging.
enforcement's focus on revenue. So when you have a system that the war on drugs, although as a failure to control drugs or really do anything positive, has resulted in a lot of property seizure and net revenue for those law enforcement agencies. And at this point in time, our law enforcement agencies don't know how to adjust, how to deal with
Yep.
a smaller budget. I'm concerned about defunding the police because if we, just change, if we reduce that town, city, or state budget, but don't address the property seizures, I think
That's right.
we're motivating police to do more property seizures.
Absolutely. It's
Or
a
to,
give and take. Absolutely. And they're being allowed to do things that are incredibly questionable.
mm-hmm.
Incredibly. But I've not yet seen, and I've done so much research trying to find, what is the legalities here? And I just don't understand why we can't hold these people accountable for causing torture on American disabled citizens.
Yeah, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot, is just how we have a real lack of checks and balances
They're not working.
at all different regulatory levels. Now, they are working to prevent healthcare access.
Oh, absolutely. The wrong way. They're working the
Yeah,
wrong way. They're
and
going really overboard.
it is a bit concerning that we have our experts and world leaders kind of on a general consensus that the human population cannot be sustained and has to be reduced.
Oh, yeah, population control.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
We
And
have
it
all the,
seems that that's even happening. I mean, I've even thought about, and I hate to even think about it, but I've even thought about with the pandemic and the
yeah.
lack of a valid response, which we know what to do. We know what to
Mm-hmm.
do. We've been given example after country after country after country. But it's all political and it's all about the bottom line. It is about the profit for those SWAT teams going in and harassing these doctors for no reason,
Mm-hmm.
or harassing them, taking everything they own, and then throwing them in prison for 20 years for overprescribing. Let me tell you something. The way I feel about that is there is no overprescribing.
No,
It
there
is
isn't.
individuals'
You have to have
metabolism.
individual responsibility too. I mean, we are
Absolutely.
all in control of our own lives.
That's right.
And that's something that's not really talked about. It's like we're going more towards a hyper regulated bubble wrap society with the illusion that
You
that's
can't
going
do
to create
medicine that
safety,
way.
but it creates chaos and danger and violence.
The prohibition and the war on drugs has created the abundance of social issue problems in America today.
Absolutely.
And if you could go back, and I would love to write a book, I would love to go back and feel well enough for a long enough time to be able to go back and factually say, okay, this is when it started, this is the war on drugs, and this is where we are. And for most social issues in America, it is due to the war on drugs. They have used it to their advantage for decades and decades, but now it is on hyperdrive. And it's dangerous. It is dangerous for me. I don't know if I have 6 months to live without pain medicine, with broken bones and whatnot, or if I have another day. But I will tell you this, till my dying breath, I will fight for my rights. And I will not accept this. I will not accept it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how big a thing I can create. I don't know, but I am on it. I have done research after research. The CDC is corrupt. There were conflicts of interest. Most of the people that designed these guidelines that have hurt all of us is related to, guess what? Suboxone
Yeah.
and marijuana development. They can't make money off big pharma except for these opioid lawsuits. In my opinion,
Right.
as a pain patient, I should be able to participate in that opioid lawsuit. It has damaged me too.
Mm-hmm. And
Now,
yet,
why isn't that allowed?
right,
Why
and
can't I
yet
do
all
that?
the pain patients are just being shut out of that dialogue. See that
And
so
most of
many
us,
times when there's a law being reviewed and the voices of the patients are just being actively shut out. That's a very disturbing development.
they created another suicide epidemic. Do you know how many pain patients
Yes.
have taken their lives and they're not keeping up with it? They
We've
don't advertise it. They don't message it. I am telling you,
yeah, we talk
it's
about
just
that a lot on the show. So thank you for bringing that up.
absolutely,
That is definitely
absolutely.
something I always like to go back to. We had I think it was around 2010, 2012, had a lot of newspaper headlines about skyrocketing suicides among veterans.
Yeah,
And that was
their
right when
pain
the
treatment.
VA hospital made their shift from
That was
orally
where it started.
prescribed
That's where
medicine
that's
to
right.
only
It
the pain
originated with
pumps
them.
to really invasive procedures. So they're only offering invasive procedures for
They were
pain
guinea
relief.
pigs.
Yeah, instead of allowing, it's very important to allow a patient to control their dosage. Sometimes they need more and sometimes they need less, and they absolutely need to have that control. To take that control away from a person is completely barbaric.
And
And
if you
yet,
don't have the disease of addiction, you're okay. You do know how to control it. I've done this
right,
for 20 years. I'm
right,
not
you're just
stupid.
being harmed for the sake of harming you, and because we're having
There's no
a
legitimate
system.
reason for any of this.
Mm-hmm.
There's no legitimate reason other than money, power, and corruption. And I am absolutely sick of it. Sick of it.
Absolutely. And again, we're
This is
talking about natural plant-based medicine. A lot of, and
absolutely.
public perception is a big part of the problem because a lot of people are ignorant. When they hear opioids, opiates, they're just thinking big pharma, Monsanto, petrochemicals. They're not thinking in realistic terms about what the substance actually is. And we're talking about a sap from a flower, ancient medicine that's been in human history as far back as
As
we can
long as
trace human
humans, as
history.
far as you can go back.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
to
As
prehistoric
far as you can
times.
go back.
It's one of the oldest
Absolutely.
medicines
Even in
used by
caveman
humanity.
times. Neanderthals, they knew. They knew how to do it. They didn't do it as well as we can do now, but they knew.
Another group I would like to see taking a stand here would be the religious group. It's right there in the Bible that God gives every seed and every plant to people to use. So I think if humans are standing in a way of blocking that from people, that should definitely be seen as a violation of the Creator's will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I definitely agree with that. And I also think that there seems to be a push in the religious right to discount all of that. And I don't know why, other than the only reason I can come up with, and I just wish this wasn't true, and I hope it's not true, but I kind of think it is that the religious community is also, right now, everything seems to be about profit. Profit over values, over basic decency. Basic decency.
I think we're seeing a lot of productive movements right now just being co-opted by other influences. So yeah.
I would.
I'm sorry, I lost
Go
you.
ahead. I would venture to say that every person in America right now, in their friends, family, work environment, whatever, they know somebody who has a painful disease. Did you know that? They do know. But the messaging coming out of the media,
it's splitting families apart.
Absolutely. We have got to find a way for the national media to take up our cause. And that is my fight. That is what I want to happen, because this is akin to war crimes. When you have a broken bone and you get it operated on, I have so much metal in my body, I probably can't even walk to the airport anymore. But you go to the ER and you say, something's wrong. It's hurting. I've got metal in my arm. I don't know what's going on. And the metal has failed, but they say, well, we can't treat you because you don't have any new broken bones. But I've got hardware in a bone that is failing. So, it's so sad. It's just so sad because I know, I'm very fortunate because I still have my brain and my intelligence, and I do my research. I try to be right on what's going on. But there's a lot of us out there that don't have even that ability right now. I certainly don't have it every day.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's an important
I may have
point.
3 good days. I won't accept that. I won't accept you taking away what I know is going to let me be a productive member of my society.
Right.
Because you have a war on drugs and you're going to prohibit me from the proper access to my care. How dare you? I'm disabled. The ADA Act should cover the majority of us. The Medicare rules, all of it.
This crackdown has resulted in people having to lose their jobs, going on disability, creating more of a need for social security. And these are people who are productive and able to live full lives and contribute back to society. So something is definitely very wrong in the motivations of our society and our leaders to be leaving us in
The
a
lack of
situation like
empathy,
this.
the lack of empathy in all of our social issues needs to, we need an awareness, a new awareness of
Absolutely.
empathy. And I do think that's coming. I just hope it comes in
I
time
do
for
too.
me.
I know.
There is a generational change going on top of all of this. It is a generational change.
Yes,
The
there is.
demographics of America are steamrolling by. You can't turn back time. You can't. You know, there's mixed children, there's black children. They will eventually out, and I'm a white woman, but I have mixed grandchildren. And eventually what's going to happen is, and it's already predicted, and that's why everybody's so in this generational change and the fighting and the money and the greed and the, oh my gosh, you know, just the alertness of everybody. They need to bring attention to this issue. This is an issue for anybody that's even having a baby.
Right.
They're even saying now, if you get a mastectomy, if you have to have a mastectomy, we recommend Advil. Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
You're going to cut my boob off. And you're going to say, here, take a Tylenol. Get over it.
They're
Just
loading
like
people up with the acetaminophen, and the acetaminophen is more directly toxic to the body and
to your
liver than
the
opioids are. The opioids are just naturalized to our bodies because we have been using them for millions of years. But then they throw something like acetaminophen into a person's body and at ridiculously high dosages. The liver is not designed to process this.
I had a seizure, and the ambulance came and got me, and I went into the ER, and I woke up. And do you know what they had going in me? And I like to have had a fit. IV Tylenol. No. You're not going to destroy my liver. My bones are gone.
Yikes.
You know, my nerves are gone. I can't work. I'm homebound. I'm bedbound. And you're going to give me IV Tylenol? Take this out of my arm now. That is worse for me than any amount of morphine you could give me.
You know, and also something I've been noticing that's just completely reckless. Like, there's so much data that exists on the harmonic resonance, magnetic resonance imagery, and ultrasounds, how they're so much safer to the body's tissues, and they give more detail on the report because they can detect bone injury, soft tissue, and etc. The thing is, to try to get access to this, they're always going to say, well, you have to do an x-ray first, or you have to do a CT scan, you have to be loaded up on all this radiation before you can have a safe image.
That's not right. That's just not right.
It's not right. It's not right. We don't have functional health care when a patient has no say in how they're treated. They cannot reduce their exposure to radiation or to acetaminophen. These things should be our basic rights.
And let me give a shout out here. You can say no. You can say absolutely not.
Right.
You have a choice. For the longest time in my journey of horrific injury and painful disease, you know, there at first, it's a culture shock. I mean,
but they already had the IV in your arm.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. And it's like, whoa, you can say no. What are you doing? What's that? What milligram? You've got to be educated. You've got to educate yourself. And you've got to say, if your gut instinct is telling you this doesn't feel right, then by God, you better follow it.
Run away.
You will get hurt. They will hurt you. And that's what's scariest to me is every new doctor, what effect is that going to have on me? Are they going to do surgery the next time on another broken bone and mess me up? I mean, and there's no recourse. Once they mess me up one more time, I'm done. I can't function. So it's very important. And I am up close and personal with the medical healthcare system. And it absolutely has turned into something that happened back when I was a child and growing up as a teenager, high school student, you know, athletic injury, whatnot. It's the haves and the have-nots. If you've got money and you've got power or you have access, you can get the good treatments. I've gotten them.
Yeah, Trump getting his hydrochloroquine, you know, that's not available to the rest of us.
Oh gosh, no. And neither is the absolute wonderful testing for all the athletes and the elites of the
Yeah.
nation, the actors, the
Right.
actresses.
The people who are making the laws about our bodies don't have to follow the same laws. How about that?
That's right. They can afford the best food. You know, disabled people and painful disease patients are food poor.
Yeah.
They are food poor.
Cynthia, I have to jump in here right now. Hello, listeners. You are listening to the Medical Freedom Radio Show with your host, Heather Lynn Martin. And today I am speaking with pain patient advocate Cynthia Thompson. And I do want to get back to our very exciting topics that we were on just recently. You spoke a little bit before about, how all of these issues, like the war on drugs, the situation for pain patients, our current political climate right now, the issues of race and poverty, it all comes together. Yeah, it's all interlinked. Yeah, classism and everything. One thing I want to mention, where you were talking about the roots of prohibition, is you might want to look into Richard Nixon a little bit, who is the president accredited with starting the war on drugs. And
absolutely,
he made
you can look at it at every point in history from that time, and you can see what has happened. And the thing is, if it was based on legitimacy and science, which I know to be true, and they are wrong. They are spreading disinformation about this situation. Right. And if you just look, you can see. And I still, to my dying day, I will believe that the war on drugs has permitted all of our social ills here in America.
What I was bringing up about Nixon, too, is when he was talking about creating this war on drugs, racism was his primary motivation.
Racism is always the motivation.
And also the whole system of enforced poverty. Now that you must know quite a bit about being disabled.
Amen to that.
Enforced poverty.
Amen.
That's what we have going on in our country. That is why we have so much poverty. Like you said, we should be the richest country in the world. Supposedly we are. Why do most of our people live in substandard conditions without access to even basic health care? It's because we have a systemic race and class war.
Race, class, and power war. It's very sad, but everybody hang in there. We're going through generational change. It's never easy, but there's no rolling back. We're going to have a generational change. Everybody's going to have to accept it. And there will be a day, and I may not be here to see it, but there will be a day when all of it, none of this ever even mattered anymore, because everybody in America is woke. They are awake. I don't care if it's Black Lives Matter, the Poor People's Campaign, Don't Punish Pain rallies. I don't care. We are awake. And those of us
there's a big awakening.
Exactly. There has to be an awakening. And it's happening. And even in this climate where there are so many social ills, the pandemic, opening the schools, which is just absolutely ridiculous to me. I just can't believe it.
Like disease center. I mean, every parent knows that sending a child to school is just like sending them into a cesspool for infections.
And from Cherokee County, Georgia. And I don't know if any of the listeners have seen the national news lately, but Cherokee County, Georgia is in the national news because they opened their schools. They just started last Monday. There are 860 people on quarantine. This is going to be a catastrophe, and I don't want that to happen. But they're not thinking right. No funding was given to operate the schools in a safe way. There is no safe way, people. There is no safe way.
Right.
If you're out and about, the virus is a very sneaky virus. We actually do know a lot about COVID viruses. We do novel viruses. We do know a lot, but this is brand new. And we are being laughed at on the global stage.
Yeah. Cynthia, if you wouldn't mind, did you want to talk a little bit about the current situation on the indigenous reservations?
I would love to get into that, but I've just started doing my research on that. So I
Okay.
don't feel like I really do have the knowledge and the facts to be able to speak on that right now. But I am working
Okay.
on that because I am a Chickasaw Indian.
Mm-hmm. And I understand there's just been a lot of just
Oh,
supply
we've treated them so.
snafus.
Oh, it's been
Can't get the
incredible.
supplies to the people.
Oh, it's incredible. It's like, I mean, it's just incredible. I just can't believe that one human to another human can treat someone so badly
I know.
in America in
It's heartbreaking.
2020.
Yeah. And it goes
You
back
know,
to that lack of checks and balances in the current system.
well, it also goes back to greed and gluttony
Mm-hmm.
and power. But we got
Right.
to get past that. And I do think we will. I do think we will.
I do
We
too.
must.
I feel like we are on the verge of an awakening. One of the positive things about hosting this radio show is that, each one of my guests has some ideas for making a better future, a more free and equitable society for people to get health care, to be able to have freedom of choice about what goes in and out of their own bodies. I've had
Right.
people on the show who've talked about innovative new ways to approach health insurance. My last
Oh,
guest,
boy. The health insurers is an
hmm
entirely different animal.
yeah, isn't it now? How much
They're
they can
very
have
discriminatory.
control. When I was talking before about the, how they insist on the X-rays and the radioactive imaging procedure before
Oh,
the
yeah.
safer, more thorough procedure, they always said, well, it's because the insurance companies demand it.
Absolutely. And they have too much power. They have too
Way
much
too much
power.
power,
Way
because there's
too
no
much.
provision for our medical freedom to protect us from a company affecting our lives in that way.
I reported the doctor that abandoned me to my insurance carrier. And
Mm,
I faced Kane. I filed a grievance and you name it. They didn't care. They didn't care how much noise I made. And I made a lot of
yeah.
noise.
I had
It
a
doesn't matter.
I had a similar experience when I was on Medicaid. I went to see a doctor who was extremely rude, extremely abusive to me, and wouldn't even treat me or discuss it. And I mean, I wasn't even looking for pain medicine or anything, actually. I just had a legitimate health issue, and I was just treated, I was abused this way. And I immediately reported her to the insurance and told them, this is fraud. This person did not provide any service. They were just abusive, and they were just, we're paying them anyway.
That's right. Like I told my insurance company, I don't want you to pay him. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want you to give him the luxury of using my insurance.
Yeah. They
He
talk
doesn't
about
deserve it.
Medicaid abuse. It's not the people using it who are abusing the system. It's the doctors, because they know they can throw that patient out of their office and they're still getting a paycheck.
That's right. And the insurance companies just keep printing them checks. Doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
about the patient. Doesn't matter. Doctor, I will give you an incentive. Medicare gives physicians, all right, I'm an orthopedic patient. I have to have a trauma surgeon on call, okay? I have to, because every break I have requires major surgery and metal implants. I have metal rods from my knee to my foot on both legs. When my ankle shattered, they connected the ankle metal to the leg metal, and now I have arm metal. And you can't withstand that type of pain without proper treatment.
Cynthia, I'm just so sorry that you are going through this, that millions are going through this.
Oh, millions. And the numbers are probably even higher than that. I mean, we say we're 50 million, that's the going saying is that there's 50 million chronic pain or painful disease disabled patients in America.
Mm-hmm. And notice that they're going after a population that's not always able to go out and protest, to get out of the house.
Oh yeah, we were
Many
the
don't even have
low-hanging fruit,
access
baby.
to the internet because, again, that enforced poverty thing.
Yeah, the rural areas. I can't get internet at my house. I live in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of nowhere, Texas. There is no way to get internet. I couldn't afford. They said they had to dig up the yard and blah blah blah. And I'm like,
Oh,
I can't afford this. And then once they put it in, it'd be like $100 a month. I
right.
can't afford that. But I shouldn't be denied access because of my financial situation.
Mm-hmm.
I
Although
didn't
we
cause
are.
it. I would be running a multi-million-dollar company right now, probably even more than that. But I got hurt. I was an active member of society. I did all kinds of different things to better society. And now I am homebound, I am bedbound, but I am fighting. And I will fight and fight and fight because what's right is right and what's wrong is absolutely wrong.
Well, God bless and thank you for being a fighter and keeping up that fight. I know you're fighting not just yourself, but for millions.
And, there's another thing too that goes into this. And I don't think, your normal average American doesn't realize this, but the isolation it causes,
Mm-hmm.
the lack of access to be able to get in your car and go for a ride
Right.
because of the
Just want to,
prohibition.
yeah, I just want to point out to our radio listeners that many in the chronic pain community are saying this whole pandemic shows everyone what everyday life is like for the chronic pain patient.
That's right. Welcome to my world.
Yeah.
And
Not
I'm
being
so
able to
sorry.
go out, not being able to leave the home.
And I feel so sorry for people, but, it's going to take a movement. But the main thing is somehow we have got to penetrate this social media and the
Mm-hmm.
mainstream media and CNN and MSNBC and
Yeah.
Fox Business and OAN. I don't care who you are, but you need to spread this message. This will affect you if you
Mm-hmm.
don't fight for your rights. It will
Right.
affect you. I don't care. I mean, the one thing I do want to bring up too is the disparity. Once you have a major medical issue that you did not cause, you're not an addict,
Yep.
you're not out there taking reckless actions. You just get sick in America, you will go broke. What kind of system is that? Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just happened in the last decade.
Yeah.
It didn't take long.
Again, with that enforced poverty thing. Somebody on Facebook just the other day talking about how they're on a small disability income, but still are forced to pay $100 a month to Medicare.
Absolutely. They took $146 from me last month. First time in my life that I haven't had my Medicare premium paid for.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent me a letter out of the blue. I got my check and it wasn't right. I couldn't believe it. To go from 1,200 to 900, that's a real far stretch right there.
Right. They just slam
I didn't
people
do
with
anything to cause.
limited incomes. So people have to choose between their rent, their food, and their medicine.
That's right. And if I can't eat because I've got to pay for my medicine, guess what? I would rather have a few good days of relief to where I can participate in my life.
Mm-hmm.
How dare they take that from me? How dare they take that
Also,
from me?
they are creating a new drive for the black market because there have been many people in chronic pain who cannot get their medicine anywhere else, who are suffering in interminable agony, who might have a contact on the street for something.
Absolutely. And I don't want to get to that point. I don't want it to get to that point.
And it's so dangerous with the prohibition and, this thing that we're seeing right now with these different substances, gray death or carfentanil, often confused with fentanyl, not the same thing at all.
Not the same thing at all.
It's like a repetition of what happened like back in I think it's the 60s or 70s, a little bit before my time, but with the paraquat in marijuana.
Absolutely.
where you had the
Absolutely.
government sprayed the paraquat, a dangerous herbicide, on many cannabis crops that were then imported into the United States. So people smoked cannabis and got sick and went to the hospitals. And that got a whole generation to believe that cannabis was actually dangerous.
No. Let me tell you something.
What do you
I
mean
will
no?
say this.
That is a fact. I know it was it was an effect for people of that generation. There are stories here locally of people who smoked a joint and went to the hospital. And it was
Absolutely.
during that paraquat incident. And it's the same thing. You've got, the CIA, Cocaine Import Agency, I'm sure behind it like they always are, and all these tainted supplies. So
It's incredible. You know what? We're the most powerful nation in the world. We still are. You may be questioning that, but we
for the
still are.
1%, yeah.
Yes, we still are. But, oh goodness, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, folks. You got to be passionate.
Yeah.
And on the days you're not suffering, if that's 2 days out of 60 days, you take those 2 days, listeners, and you fight for what is right. You fight for access. No one in this country should be forced into poverty because of the actions of another that has hurt you.
Absolutely.
And damaged
Is exactly what is happening. Just like in your situation, when you are denied the medicine that allows you to have quality of life and be productive, they are forcing you into poverty.
And it affects every family member that you're around.
Then the government's going to complain about the drain on Social Security. Well, they created that drain. They're creating it.
They sure did. There's a way to do all of this. It's very simple.
People who are forced onto it would be very glad to have their lives back.
You better believe it. I would give anything. My brain is good. My body doesn't work. Nope. And the one thing I want to say, too, to those people out there that are just so desperate and you are on pain medicines regularly, legacy patients is what I characterize it as. And that means someone who's been on a high dose of opioids for 10, 20 years like me before you're completely abandoned. Let me tell you something. It is basic science that the pharmacology in your brain, after being on 500 milligrams, which were necessary for me. Now, 10 milligrams may be necessary for someone else.
Cynthia, we have 2 minutes left to the show. Just
okay.
FYI.
Okay. I'm trying to think of my final thought here.
Do you have any links or resources you want to share with our listeners for further investigation on any of these topics we've covered today?
Let me go over this real quick.
Okay.
Health and Human Services has the largest Inspector General's office in the federal government, with approximately 600 dedicated to combating fraud, waste, and abuse, and to improve the efficiency of HHS programs. A majority of OIG resources goes toward the oversight of Medicare and Medicaid, which affects most painful disease patients, legacy patients. They are on Medicare if they're not on both Medicare and Medicaid.
Yep.
These programs that represent a significant part of the federal budget and that affect this country's most vulnerable citizens. The government oversight extends to programs under other HHS institutions, including the CDC, Control and Prevention, National Institutes of Health, and the Food and Drug Administration. And in 2007, the CDC, an Inspector General's report came out that there were so many conflicts of interest on their advisory board committee members that they would not address. So this isn't the first for the CDC.
Right.
But it's the worst. It is the worst.
Absolutely. Cynthia, thank you so much for being on my show today. Thank you for courageously sharing with me and our listeners your story. I know it's not easy to share these stories, at least not for everyone. So I'm just really glad that you chose to confide in us and share your experience. I'm grateful for everyone who speaks out.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And I must say thank you for what you're doing. I think it's wonderful. I hope there's a national emergence of the people like you that we can get through every state. It would be wonderful because, somebody will hear you once you repeat it over and over and over and over again
That's
to
what
enough
I
people.
hope. That's what
That's
I
right.
hope. Thank
That's
you,
right.
Cynthia Thompson, and thank you, radio listeners. We'll be back again next month here on WGXC 90.7 Acra on the Medical Freedom Show. Have a great day.